This is Dead Stick Radio, episode 20, recorded Tuesday, December 8th, 2020. Give Hope Wings and Flying for Charity with Dave McElroy.
My story is I had a Comanche 250 for 23 years with a partner in Toronto, Burlington, just out of Toronto.
Yep.
And then in 2000, I moved over to the UK for our company. We bought a company over there, and so my CEO at the time asked me if I'd maybe want to think about going over there for a year or two to help with the turnaround because it was a goddamn mess. Mm-hmm. And I'd recently divorced, and it actually was an opportunity. So I said, sure. So I went over there for a year or two to turn this company around and stayed for 15.
Oh, yeah. Was it oil and gas?
No, it was Norboard, wood products company. So actually Norboard, we became the world's largest manufacturer of OSB, or in strandboard.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And while I was there, we had 4 plants when I got there, and in the UK.
Yeah. And
we closed one of them and went from 1,600 to 1,000, actually 900 employees. And then in 2000. In 2004, we bought another plant in Belgium. So we had 4 plants again, 3 in the UK and 1 in the continent.
Yeah.
So I kind of ran the European division there till 2015, and I retired. And anyways, my partner Chris in the Comanche, I said, I'd always had this dream to cross the Atlantic.
Yeah.
If you guys have heard of Ernest K. Gahn, the writer, the aviation author from years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And, he's got some great stories about flying to Greenland and going up the Wrong Valley and Narsarsuaq and all that stuff. And I'd always been fascinated. So it was life ambition. So now I'm living over there. So I said to Chris, I want to fly the North Atlantic. But my problem is I had a really heavy senior executive job and never took more than 2 weeks off for 40 years, And when you're going to cross the Atlantic in a light plane and then come back, you got to have more than 2 weeks because you never know what the weather is, right?
Yeah, you got to wait for it.
So I said, well, I'll take it over. 2 weeks, I can plan a 2-week window to take it over, and I'll bring it back the next year. And he said, no, you moved away. I don't want to lose the airplane. So after about 4 years, by 2004, I'm just going crazy. I'm back in Toronto 3 or 4 times a year, so I flew to Comanche then, but, not much. And I'm going crazy over there, not flying. So I bought an RV-6.8, and I flew that for 10 years over there. I've put 800 or 900 hours on it. And then I was going to retire at the end of 2013, and I thought, I've got, for the first time in my life, I'm going to have some time. I'm going to fly the North Atlantic, right? So then as I started thinking about it, I can't comprehend having time off, like it's never been part of my life ever. Mm-hmm. And so, but I'm thinking about this. And so I'm going to cross the North Atlantic and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to finally do it. And then I get thinking, well, shit, why not just keep going? So I ended up flying Comanche around the world in 2014. And I was going to fly the RV, and put tanks in it and everything. But I'm talking to Chris, my partner back in Toronto. In the meantime, he bought a derelict Comanche from Rockcliffe, Ottawa. And it was lying in the snow for 3 or 4 years. And he trucked it back he had a shop in Burlington. And he wanted a retirement project. So basically, he took this derelict Comanche 180, for 4 years, and he rebuilt it into a cream puff. So now he got it flying. So now what do I need 2 Comanches for? And I said, well, I've got an airplane in the UK. What do I need a Comanche in Burlington for that I never fly? So we sold a 250. So then you wind forward, and I was on the phone. I said, Chris, I'm going to do an RTW. He said, what the fuck's an RTW? And I said, around the world. He said, what do you mean? I said, I'm going to fly around the world. In what? And I said, well, my RV. And he said, well, why don't the 2 of us go in the Comanche? Okay. So that was about a year ahead, and about 3 or 4 months to go, 4 or 5 months to go, he phoned me and he said, I'm not going to go. I'm not going. And I said, what do you mean? He said, I can't sleep nights. And blah, blah, blah. He said, we'll still be partners. And I said, well, Jesus, Chris, this is, and I was down in the Channel Islands air racing. And I said, let's both think about it for the weekend. And I'll think of some options, because we'd already started fundraising for charities.
Yeah.
And we were planning around the world from Toronto to Toronto. But also when I flew across to Scotland, we'd relaunch for a Scottish charity and fly around. So when we got to Toronto, I'd cross the Atlantic again to complete the Scottish RTW and then bring the Comanche back. So I said, well, Chris, we're a long ways in. We've collected money from charities on both sides of the Atlantic in this round the world trip, and he's not going to go. And I said, well, let's think about it for the weekend. I'll try and think of some options. So I sent him an email. So all I can think is maybe we try and do a shorter trip, maybe just back and forth across the Atlantic.
Yeah.
We just can the whole thing, or give everybody the money back because we hadn't really spent any money yet, or maybe I just do the round the
solo around the world
RV6, RV6, go back to that plan A. But it's pretty awkward now because, I plan to leave, So I phoned him on Monday when I got back and I said, did you see my email? And he said, yeah. And I said, what do you think? And he said, well, there's a fourth option you never mentioned. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, well, you go. Well, I said, what, in your airplane? He said, yeah, we're still partners. I'll get the airplane prepared. I'll join you for some of it. But in the end, he never said why, but I think there was 3 reasons. One is he was getting too much heat from the kitchen. Yeah. 2 is he was really nervous about the oceanic legs.
Yeah.
And 3, he didn't want to be away for 80 days. He just didn't want to be away for 3 months. So anyways.
This is good. Just to interrupt you, Brian's actually working on a round the world trip in a Lake Buccaneer.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's it's kind of near and dear to my heart because I'm planning to do effectively the same type of trip, go around the world. And because my plane's an amphib, I can technically pick up a world record in that.
Right. So you'd launch from Edmonton or that area?
Yeah, exactly. Just launch from home here and then head out that way. So obviously, I'm going to have to do the northern route across Russia there. But
you're going to go west or east?
I'm going to go west, or sorry, east. Yeah, Easter. So come across. So go to Europe first, and then across Asia, and then back up around that way. So.
Well, we can talk separately about this, but I got lots of information that you'll find very helpful. In the event, I decided and things have changed. It's 6 years later now, but I decided not to go the Russia-Alaska for 2 reasons. One is both Japan, Russia, and China at that time were so GA unfriendly, and the costs were outrageous and totally unpredictable. Yeah. So I didn't like that idea at all. So I ended up going mid-Pacific. So, and part of what Chris, my partner, he joined me in Singapore, and we flew across Indonesia together to Darwin, Australia, top left corner. Yep. And then we circumnavigated Australia right around the coast to Brisbane on the east side. Yep. And then he got off and went home on the airlines. And I was joined. I flew with 8 different people, flew with me at different times on this trip. But a young Malaysian pilot joined me, lovely guy. He was 23. 2 years earlier, when he was 21, he'd done a solo round the world. And he was the youngest guy in history to do that, a solo around the world at 21.
Really?
But he'd gone the Russian-Alaska route, and he hadn't flown. And so he came along with me so we departed Brisbane, or Gold Coast, and 4 legs to Hawaii, Vanuatu, American Samoa, Christmas Island to Kona, Hawaii. And then he got off, and I did the big leap to the West Coast alone because I was so full of fuel.
Right. You couldn't fit another person, probably.
I could have, but it was Chris's airplane. He said, no, solo. We had got authority from Transport Canada, which took 8 months, and that's a whole other story, to load the Comanche up to 21% over gross to 3,200 pounds. The normal empty weight or gross of a 180 is 2,500 pounds.
Yeah.
So I was up to about 3,150 pounds with full fuel.
What did you do for ferry tank? Did you have them custom made, or did you?
There's a company called Turtle Pack in Australia, and we bought a collapsible bladder.
Yep.
So we took the back seat out of the Comanche and put it in there sideways. Yeah. And it took 110 gallons. 110. So I had 30 in each main, 60 gallons in the wings, and 110, total 170.
Right.
So there's a whole story about the Pacific crossing. I'll tell you another time. It's a great story, but I don't want to take up all this time with that.
Well, you clearly made it, though.
Yeah, I made it. It was 17 hours. I took off at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and landed in Santa Maria, California at noon the next day. And
probably tired.
Quite tired. Yeah, quite tired. Yeah. So anyways, that was the deal. So Chris said, you take the airplane. You did the trip. We're still partners. He joined me from Singapore to the east coast of Australia. And then he joined me again in the Bahamas, Great Exuma.
Yeah.
And we flew up to Toronto and stopped at Oshkosh because that year, the International Comanche Society, which we were members of, was having their annual general meeting at Oshkosh during the air show. So I was the guest speaker at their AGM dinner. I was the dinner speaker at Oshkosh. Yeah. So when we left Oshkosh, we had a couple of days there to enjoy the show, blah, blah, blah. And it was our last leg into Toronto was just like, it was a couple hours or 2.5 or whatever it was. And that was the final, the completion of the Canadian round the world part. So when we're flying over Michigan, I get a call from the center, and they said, "I've got a message for you. Go ahead." So London Radio wants you to give them a call. So when we got a bit closer, we called London Radio, and he said, "Yeah, the CTV news helicopter's been on. They want to meet you and fly in with you for your landing." So we agreed to rendezvous over the Burlington Bay Skyway Bridge, which is only like 4 miles from our home airport, right? And of course, we're going back into Toronto Island. So we rendezvoused with them, and we flew up the lakeside to Toronto, and they were beside us, trying to keep up with us in the chopper, and we were doing a live interview on the radio. It was really keen. And then, of course, they filmed our landing, live and broadcast it. So it was pretty neat. Yeah. So we landed in Toronto Island. 80 day. It was the name of the project was Fly RTW 80 around the world in 80 days.
Yeah.
And we landed there 80 hours, 2 hours and 30 minutes after I took off. So that wasn't bad.
That's good planning.
When I took off from Toronto Island, and I had another guy with me, a friend who ponied up a $15,000 donation to Sick Kids Hospital for the privilege of flying across the Atlantic with me, right?
Yeah.
So we took off on runway 08 there. I took off and the wheels are up. And we're just about to go over from tower to center. And I said, Island Tower, it's Yankee Hotel uniform. And he said, "Go ahead." And I said, "Yeah, I'm reporting a 25,000-mile final for runway 08. He liked that.
That's amazing.
So anyways, lots of stories from that one I won't bore you with here, but you've got a great adventure. How long are you planning to spend on yours, Brian?
I'm pretty preliminary in my actual planning for it right now. Yeah. So it's going to be a little bit longer for me, obviously, because I got a much slower aircraft. But I'm very I'm kind of in the early preliminary planning stages. Now, did you do all the planning yourself for that flight, or did you use because I know there's a couple services that do that?
Well, you can spend $100,000 if you want on flight planning services, Skyway or whatever they are in Calgary, and there's one in Dallas or Houston, and there's various. But I did the route planning, and I just did it on not on ForeFlight. It wasn't that well advanced yet, but on another's And I just went on and I drew line, I did a route, and which I adjusted, 35 times, as I got, because I was a year in the planning phase.
Yeah.
And then I investigated the services and what I ended up doing. So I did my route planning, and then I got a guy in the UK who I'd be happy to introduce you to in York, England. And there's two guys. There's one in York, England. There's another company in Norway, and they know each other. They're competitors, but they both do the same service, and they'll give you whatever level service you want. But my guy, Mike, like lives in a little house. I actually went and saw him, met him before I engaged with him. But he lives in a little house. He met me in a pub in York, and we had lunch. And he's there, and he's available 24 hours a day. And what the main function he did for me was get me my country clearances. And basically what you do in line 18 of your flight plan is when you're filing to go from Canada to Greenland, you have your country permission to enter the country, which he arranges that. And then you just put that under remarks in your flight plan, permit numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's what he did for me. And he also, where I needed ground handling, he knows everybody in the world, yeah. Yep. So he'd give me an introduction to them. But I did use ground handling everywhere except North America, Western Europe, and Australia. But everywhere else I did, because you got the language issues and of course the bureaucracy. Which, have you ever flown outside of Canada or the U.S.?
Not
I flew in China.
Yeah, Scott's flown in China.
Yeah, so it's a different world. People don't understand here in North America how lucky we are until you go somewhere else. I mean, everything's double to triple the cost or more for GA, including fuel. And the bureaucracy is unbelievable. It just,
yeah, so, it's almost not manageable.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And
the young guy that flew with me, when he got to Japan, he got 11,500 US landing fee at the airport.
Yeah.
Ooh.
When he got to Russia, I forget the name of the place. It was cold, and so he wanted to put the aircraft inside for the night. So they said no problem. They put it in the hangar, and they wanted $5,000 for that US, and he beat him down to 2,500 US. Yeah, to put the airplane in the hangar overnight. Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. I understand some places you can't even get things like 100 low lead. You really have to pick your airports.
Major issue, especially the Pacific. It's getting worse and worse now. But what's happened with Russia since I did that trip? Russia's just opened right up, and there's a guy in Moscow that'll do this service. And I was last year, 2019, June 2019. We did a Give Hope Wings mission to Alaska, and I've flown up there quite a few times before, Alaska. But this was the second time. I flew out to Nome, on the northwest coast, where it's only
far.
24 miles across to Russia.
Yeah.
So I did that for the second time. And when I was in Nome, there was a group of pilots there, and they were going into Russia. And it's opened right up. You can go across into Russia like on a day trip for a couple of days. You leave Nome, fly into inland Russia, spend a couple of days in some city there, I forget the name of it, and then come back. And they were stuck in Nome for weather because it's at that time, this is a year and a half ago, you could only cross into Russia VFR and with a minimum of 5,000-foot ceiling and 10 miles or whatever. So they didn't have the weather to go legally. So you don't, when you go into Russia, you do things legally. Yeah, you don't. Yeah.
Well, Matt, what was it? Matt Guthmiller. He was one of the more recent guys who was the youngest person in the world to fly around the world. He went up there to Russia this past summer, I believe it was, and he made the news because they were all worried that it was some American coming in and not paying the dues and stuff. So it was pretty difficult even for someone who's done it, who's gone over there.
Yeah. So basically twice now, last year and in 2016, I was up there. I took the route, and you have to do this someday just for fun, maybe not as part of Around the World, but the Bering Sea. It's like 40 miles from Russia, from the U.S. to Russia, and right in the middle of this Bering Sea is the two islands, the Diomedes, and there's Little Diomede and Big Diomede. And Big Diomede is quite big. It's in Russia, and then there's 2 miles. And Little Diomede's only about 3 miles long plus and a mile wide, and it's in the U.S. and the border goes down, and the international date line is between the two, Little Diomede and Big. So now these days with GPS, we've got it made. So the first time I went, and the second time, I went into the FAA office in Nome, and they had an office there right now. They've since outsourced it, but so first time I was there, I was leading a group of 6 airplanes. And I said, we want to fly out to the islands and, circle around and he said, you won't have any problems. We didn't even have to file a flight plan or a flight note. He said, so here's the deal. You go out there, you've got your GPS, and you don't cross the line. In fact, to be safe, you just use the west side of Little Diomede. Don't even go the 2 miles in case you make a mistake, because you won't have any problems. But when you go out there, and there was 6 of us, doing orbits, you won't have any problem. But everybody's watching. They're watching from NORAD in California, in Colorado, and the Russians are watching. You cross that line, you're going to have a very bad day. You'll have an MU on your left wing, and you'll be landing in Russia. Yeah. But I mean, shit, it's only 20 miles, and it's like to Siberia, right? And it's like being in Vancouver and looking at the North Shore Mountains.
Yeah.
It almost feels that close. Yeah.
Wow.
And absolutely beautiful. Beautiful.
That's incredible. Yeah. I really want to kind of go up there and do do a bit of Alaska and stuff. I need to gather a lot of experience and stuff and some ratings and stuff before I actually start out and do it. So places like that are great places to go and try that. So I think I'll probably go do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have you said you had an RV6, was it?
Yeah. I had a 6A, which is the one with the training wheel on the front.
Yeah.
And I've got a 6.
The beginner one.
Huh?
That's the beginner one.
The beginner one with the nose
6A,
wheel,
yeah. A, the RV is an A means nose wheel, yeah.
Yeah, I know. The beginner.
Yeah.
So did you build that plane yourself, or did you buy it?
No, I'm not a builder. I bought both of them. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a great cartoon made the rounds about a year or so ago, and it shows the guy, young, good-looking guy, sitting on the edge of the bed like this with his head in his hands, and the bed's behind him, and a very nice-looking, lovely wife sitting up in a flimsy negligee reading a book, and he's sitting like this, and the little bubble says, I'm a nose wheel pilot. My wife thinks we should both start seeing other men. So yeah,
those jokes will never get old.
No, absolutely.
That's
but they're way easier in the wind.
Yeah.
So now with your around the world trip, you were raising money for a charity. What charity was that? So
when Chris popped up and said, "Why don't the two of us go in the Comanche?" I was going to do this round the forward flight out of Scotland for a totally charity-run air ambulance in Scotland that had just started up to raise money for them at my home airport. And I was chairman of the flying club at the Perth airport. And so it was just a natural. I said, well, you guys they're just raising money to start up this very expensive helicopter ambulance service. And I said, this is what I'm thinking. So I started a project to fly around the world to raise money for Scotland's charity air ambulance. And then Chris said, why don't the two of us go? And I said, well, shit, that's a whole different scene. And I said, well, actually, maybe we could find a charity in Canada and we could raise, to help defray some, spread the load a bit. Because, if you can collect some money and then you'd use a little bit of that to cover expenses, part of your expenses. So after a little going around and whatnot, my son, who's got 2 kids that are Asperger kids, he said, Sick Kids Foundation, Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto, turns out they've got probably the most advanced Asperger's Autism Research Center in the world, the first or second. So he put me in touch, and I went in to see the head of that and said, I'm going to fly around the world. I want to raise money for a charity, and then blah, 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 Scotland. And so he just leapt at it. So we ended up, so all the money we raised in Canada was for Sick Kids Foundation. All the money we raised in Europe was for the Scottish Air Ambulance.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. So I didn't know anything about fundraising in those days, right? I've learned a lot since. But we raised a net of $150,000 for those two, about 80,000 each, Canadian dollars, yeah. And then that was 2014. Then 2018, we did this trip around. We flew around South America for 60 days for Hope Air. Yeah. Well, I'd learned a bit. We raised $520,000 in that. Wow. So, wow, and then the Alaska trip last year, we raised $250,000. Then 2 or 3 guys from Ontario did a mini trip in the autumn of this year, late September. They called it the Soo de Saguenay around Ontario and Quebec. And it was only 5 days, but they raised $120,000. So we're up, getting close to about $900,000 we've raised for Hope Air.
Yeah.
And our ambition for 2021 is to raise 1.1 million to get us up to $2 million for Hope Air.
Well, that's a huge step up. Yeah. What are you going to do to get there?
Well, the previous trips, other than this little mini trip they did in Ontario and Quebec, but the other 2 trips, we take off and we're, first day we're out of Canada. We're heading south to 20 countries in the U.S. and Latin America, or we're heading north to Alaska and we're out of Canada. Well, this one is from Victoria to St. John's, Newfoundland and back. And we're going to be in Canada flying for 30 days. And we're going to stop, like Kelowna, for example, our first stop after Victoria's Kelowna. Well, Kelowna is the biggest fundraising depot in Canada for service depot for Hope Air in Canada. Like there's 1,600 flights in and out of Kelowna last year, Hope Air flights. So we'll do a big PR event here. Then we'll go on to Calgary and overnight there. And we've got PR. We're going to hit all. Are we recording now? Are you guys is this going to be usable or?
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is all completely usable. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
Everybody's going to hear this.
Okay. So we're going to launch in Victoria. We'll stop in Kelowna for lunch and a PR event. And Kelowna being Hope Air's biggest depot in Canada. And the airport here has always been a great supporter of Give Hope Wings and Hope Air.
Yeah.
So, we'll have a great event here on to Calgary. And then our route takes us on. So the way we've structured this trip, it's 8,500 nautical miles. And I hope you'll have, I'll give you a copy of the map that you can maybe integrate with this somehow.
Yeah, we will for sure.
But we've got it divided into 3 phases. And what we learned, I'll back up a little bit here. So when I flew around the world and my partner bailed out on me, this was a big problem, but it was also an opportunity because I've got an empty rate seat. So one of my friends in Scotland who was good, he was very good support just in the planning. And he's kind of an idea guy. He says, this is an opportunity. You got an empty seat. So you auction it off and get people to come along with you and make a generous donation to the charities. So that round the world, I had 8 different people fly with me and make large and not quite so large donations. Yeah. So come along to our South American trip. That was 20,000 nautical miles. We divided it into 8 segments and we asked for $30,000 because I had an empty seat again, $30,000 donation to somebody who wanted to share in this great adventure. So, and we sold them all. So we raised over $500,000. 200,000 of it came from what we call VFCs, volunteer flight crew, who fly along with us. So we thought, how crazy is that to ask somebody for $30,000? Well, actually, when you sit and analyze it, who might be interested And this is the same thing we did in Alaska and we will do in cross Canada. So we've divided the cross Canada trip into 3 phases. Phase 1 is Victoria to Toronto. That's 7 days. And the whole trip, we're going to land at all 11 capitals, Ottawa and all 10 provincial capitals. And we'll be stopping at historic, particularly heavy emphasis on aviation, museums, etc. along the way.
Yep.
Yeah.
So phase 1, and we're asking people for that week flying with us to donate $20,000. And so going back to South America, we're saying, well, how do we find 8 or 20 people to make donations like that? When you think about it, the people who'd be interested in this, they got 4 attributes. 1, they've got a bit of time, a week or 2 off to connect with us and fly. 2, yep. They got a bit of money because this is for charity.
Yep.
3, they want to have the adventure of a lifetime. This is a bucket list, the mother of all bucket lists, to fly across Canada or a big part of Canada and see what we see. Who gets to do this? 1/10 of 1% of the Canadians ever, the world's population, 1/100th of 1%. Who gets to do this? Nobody, right?
Yeah.
So it's an adventure of a lifetime. That's 3. And 4 is they want to give back. There are probably people who have done well and they want to give back. As all of us expedition captains want to give back. I mean, we're not doing this because we're making money. It's costing us a lot of money personally. We make a donation to Hope Air ourselves, and then we organize this to bring in a lot of money. We're in it because we're kind of like those 4 attributes. We've got the time to do it. We can afford to do it. Most of us are retired businessmen, yeah, the pilots.
Right.
We can afford to do it. We want to have a flying adventure of a lifetime, and we want to give back. Yeah, and this Hope Air connection that we've got is such a natural. Going back to the first one, back in 2017, I was hunkering for. I'd flown up to Alaska in 2016 with a bunch of I led 6 aircraft up there, and I was hankering for another long distance trip. But I wasn't going to, I told, when we finished our adventure, 26th adventure there was 11 of us in 6 airplanes. And our last supper was in Prince Rupert. We came down the coast before we split up. And so the guys said at, our last supper said, well, McElroy, where's the next big trip? And I said, I don't know. Well, we've just been north. I guess it should be south, eh?
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the guys, Russ Airy, I'm in. So that was 2016, June. So about August 2017, I'm getting itchy. And I get thinking, well, I'd been to Colombia, but I'd never been further south than Colombia. What about flying around South America? So I phoned Russ in Windsor. And I said, hey, I'm thinking about flying around South America next year. I'm in. I'm in. I said, you're serious? He said, I'm serious. So I got an RV6, he's got an RV9A. And so, okay, so I said, well, but we're not going to do it just for fun. We're going to do it for a great cause. So I'm casting around for a great cause. And I was thinking about Kelowna General Hospital. And then one of my friends said, well, he was just at a social do. And one of the guys at this event, whatever it is, in Kelowna, was Sam Samador, who's the airport director here of Kelowna International Airport. And he mentioned it to Sam. And he said, well, what about Hope Air? And so he says, well, what about Hope Air? And I said, what's Hope Air? I'd never heard of it. I lived in the UK for 15 years. And so I looked up their website and I talked to Russ and he said, I'm in. So I phoned Hope Air. This was August or September 2017. And I said, hi, my name's Dave McElroy. I'm thinking about flying around South America to raise money for a charity. And your name came up. She said, hang on a minute. And she put me through to the VP. And so I told her, I said the same thing. And she said, you know what? Me and myself and the president of Hope Air, we're going to be out in Vancouver next week. Is there any way you could meet us for dinner? I said, sure. So I flew down to Vancouver and I met them. Actually, he was tied up, but I met her for dinner. So that was the birth of Give Hope Wings. And, so far we've raised almost $900,000 for Hope Air. The average cost of a Hope Air flight, average, because most of them are on airliners, right?
Right.
Some of them are private pilots like me and whatnot that do flights, but that's like 1 or 2%. The other 98's they book airlines for clients. And so the average cost, because particularly WestJet and Air Canada and on all the regional carriers, they're very generous with Hope Air, and they donate blocks of seats, and plus they give Hope Air a heavily discounted rates. So the average cost for all the flights in a year is $250 each. So $1,000 funds 4 flights, on average.
Yeah.
So far we've raised, call it round numbers, $1 million. Well, that's funded 4,000 free medical flights for Canadians who have to get disadvantaged Canadians, financially disadvantaged Canadians who have to get to health care far from home. So on the basis of Hope Air is Canada's got a great healthcare system, by world standards, it really does. But if you live way off in the Tules somewhere, access to that great healthcare system is a huge issue. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also what you talked about, if you have specific medical illnesses or more rare medical illnesses, you have to travel to get the care.
To an urban center. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you've got a 10-year-old kid, if you live in Smithers, British Columbia, and you've got a 10-year-old kid with cancer and he needs 10 trips to the cancer unit in Vancouver, it's a 15-hour bus ride each way, or it's an hour-and-a-half flight on Hope Air, and free. So one of the things that Hope Air's done studies and all that, and basically they've determined that every Hope Air flight directly affects at least 7 people on average, impacts 7 people, from pilots to taxi drivers to the medical staff to blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the family. And of course, if it's kid, 40% of Hope Air clients are kids. And of course, if they're younger than 12 or whatever, then Hope Air also takes their parent or guardian. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, if you think about it, so far we've funded 4,000 flights, which has impacted 4/7s or 28,000 people.
Wow.
And next year, if we raise over $1 million, it's another 4,000 flights, another 28,000 people impacted. So this is pretty significant. And of course, it's great to sit here and talk about it. But when you meet a Hope Air client, I'll tell you another story. Last year, I put my Give Hope Wings shirt on because I was doing a photo shoot out at the airport before we went to Alaska. And so we were at the airport and we did this photo shoot, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm driving home and I stopped into Walmart to pick up a couple of things on the way. So I'm at Walmart and I got a few good goodies and whatnot. And I'm coming up to the cash register, and there's this fairly large woman who's the cashier. And, I'm kind of walking towards her, and she looks up, and she's, "Give Hope Wings, Hope Air, you saved my son's sight." And she's screaming at the top of her lungs, and I'm scared the hell out of me, and I'm looking around, everybody's looking. "You saved my son's flight. My son had 10 flights to Vancouver, and he'd be blind if it wasn't for you people."
Wow.
So, and of course, I'd just come from the airport where we'd had a 9-year-old girl with the same story, and her mother, that Hope Air had basically changed her life forever. This girl with some illness, I forget what it was. But there's like 4,000 stories like that we funded already, and another 4,000 next year. I mean, you meet these people, and they're people who are, the average, this is probably out of date, but 2 years ago, the average annual income of family income for Hope Air clients was $28,000. Wow. So, if you're in Newfoundland and you have to get for treatment in Montreal, and your average income as a family is $28,000, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, well, that's a massive chunk of your disposable income just on that.
Yeah, just to transport. And the other thing, basically, Hope Air solves two problems for these people. The problems of distance and cost. They shrink the distance from 15 hours to 1 or whatever it is, and the cost disappears. And now they've formed, in the last year or two years ago this started, they've formed a strategic alliance with BNB.
Who's BNB?
I've got the term wrong. Where you rent houses or
Airbnb.
Oh, Airbnb.
Airbnb.
Yeah.
And Airbnb is donating. So now Hope Air is able to provide transport and in many cases, a hotel or a home accommodation for the parents while they're there for a day or two for the hospital and all this stuff.
That's something a lot of people don't think about is that whole side aspect. Even if our healthcare system is free, how do you get somebody there? How do you put them up when they're receiving treatment? If they've got to be there for a week or two, how do you get them there? And how do you how do they live
and look after them? And Hope Air, we don't just dump them at the airport. We make sure they're met. It's usually not an ambulance because we're not an ambulance service. We're going to get people to specialized treatment, right? At urban hospitals that they can't get where they are. Because ambulance, that's a whole different issue. That's not Hope Air's affairs, yeah? So, but basically, we don't just dump in the airport. We make sure that they've got transport, and our pilots, the Hope Air pilots that are flying, they make sure they get in a cab or they take them themselves down to the hospital, whatever. Yeah, so, and then accommodation, there's things like McDonald House and whatnot that have accommodation, but not for everybody. So this is a whole dimension that Hope Air has been able to add for over the last couple of years. Yeah, this Airbnb.
Wow. Sounds like you're doing a ton of work for that. And so obviously Hope Air is doing a lot of this kind of great charity type of work, and you're doing this cross Canada tour.
Yeah, so we're doing this basically for several reasons. One is to raise money to fund lots of Hope Air flights. Two is to raise awareness of Hope Air, because it's amazing how many people don't know about the service. It's, doctors.
If I didn't hear about you guys coming through Villeneuve this summer, I wouldn't have heard about it.
Right.
Yeah, same thing.
So it's the best kept secret in Canada, And Hope Air has set a mission. They did about 13,000 flights last year, the year before COVID. It's down this year. But it was about 13,000 flights, so it's 1,000 flights a month. Eh? So if you divide that by
30 days,
it's what, 30 a day?
Yeah.
Like so if you think about it, there's at least 1 or 2 or 3 Hope Air flights in the air as we speak, right?
Yeah.
So and obviously Give Hope Wings has become an important fundraising avenue for Hope Air. And they've set a vision to double their service from 12 to 25,000 missions per year in 5 years.
Right.
So there's a huge need for this service, and the need grows every time more people find out about it. So they want to have the facilities and the funding to be able to double over the next 5 years. So we're certainly playing into that. And Hope Air, all the staff at Hope Air are amazing people. The other thing that really attracted me, going back to our first conversation, 2016, when I looked them up on the website, the first thing I saw is how efficient they are. They're very lean and mean, and lots of charities. You see some charities that are bragging only 30% of their donations go to admin, 70% goes to services and whatnot. And others are much, much worse. I won't mention any names, but some of these charities with 500 and 900,000 a year salaries for the CEO and whatnot. That's not Hope Air. Hope Air is lean and mean, and their maximum 15 cents in any dollar donated goes to admin. Everything else goes to booking flights. Yeah. So that attracted to me. I come from a very competitive industry, the lumber, the wood products business. And if your costs aren't right, you don't survive. And so that's kind of drilled into my ethos. And I like lean and mean and efficiency. And Hope Air was great. Obviously, it's all about aviation. and it's about helping people with medical problems. So what could be more natural than to fly, do long distance flights to raise money for this great organization, right?
Well,
So
you have the time of your life while raising money for such a great group, while affecting 4,000 people a year, plus
what could possibly go wrong?
Effects.
Yeah.
What could possibly go wrong with this equation, right?
Yeah.
So I guess the big important question I have to ask you is, how does somebody get involved in Hope Air and this Give Hope Wings run? Whether you're a pilot, whether you're just a regular sponsor, or just kind of a regular interested person, how do you get involved, and how do you help out with this?
So basically, we've got a great website up, givehopewings.ca. That's over the next month or two, that's going to be integrated into Hope Air's website. When we've completed the first mission around South America, Hope Air asked me, could they take ownership of the Give Hope Wings entity, because it's actually a pretty well-known brand now. Give Hope. And I said, of course. Hope Air owns the brand, and rightfully so. And they've decided, they've got a new president, early this year, about March. Mark Rubenstein took over as CEO. Wonderful, great guy. As was the guy before him, Doug. But Mark's got enormous business and charitable and marketing experience. And so they decided they want to fold our website, givehopewings.ca, into Hope Air's website, hopeair.ca. But you can go to givehopewings.ca and everything pops up. And you'll see there, right on the homepage, there's three PDFs you can tag for volunteer flight crew, for expedition captains. So to your question, Brian, how does one get involved? And there's a brochure on sponsorship. So we've got various levels of corporate sponsorship. We're hoping to attract a lead sponsor, a presenting sponsor for $200,000. We're hoping to attract 3 key sponsors, like one for each of the 3 phases. There's 3 phases for $100,000, and then there's $50,000, 25, 10, etc. Various levels of support from various corporate, and there's many benefits of sponsorship, because this is going to receive so much press. We're going to have up to 25 airplanes flying at a time some days, yeah? It's going to receive, and we've got press events all over the place to promote. So going back to our objectives, it's to raise money for Hope Air, to raise awareness of Hope Air, obviously to promote our key corporate sponsors. And 4th is to have the experience of a lifetime, for everybody involved. And then we've got a 5th one, which is equally important from my perspective, and all 3 of us founders of Give Hope Wings shared this, is that we want to inspire young people, actually young people of any age, because we actually, I guess think of it this way, when we started, before we flew around South America, kind of our tagline is, we're 3 retired businessmen, and we're ordinary people. But ordinary people are capable of extraordinary things if they put their mind to it. And we think there's an inspiring story here to tell. And I've given talks about Give Hope Wings, Hope Air, to so many audiences all across Canada, and inspiring young people. And it's not just about flying and aviation. It's about, I think the biggest gift we could give anybody is let me put it this way. We think, the 3 of us founders thought, that one of the biggest constraints on young people is the inability to imagine a much bigger life for themselves. Whether you're in Afghanistan or China or Canada, northern Canada, anywhere, and you don't have a lot in your life, not a lot of opportunity, it's impossible to imagine. So, like, if you told me when I was 20 or 30 or 40 or 10 you know what? When you're 66, you're going to fly around the world in a single engine airplane, and you're going to be the 198th person in the history of the world to do that. You know, there's 700 or 800 astronauts and cosmonauts. You're going to be the 198th person in the history of the world to do that. You told me that when I was 10. I said, well, not only is that unbelievable and obvious nonsense, it's unimaginable. You can't imagine that, you know? And when you think about young people, we all grow up where we grow up. I grew up in a very small town in British Columbia with very limited horizons. I mean, I was privileged to grow up where I did, but I had no understanding of what was available to people, you know?
And what the opportunity was.
What the opportunities are. And there's so many opportunities, but kids don't understand that because nobody's talking to them about it, you know? And the biggest constraint on many young lives is the inability to even imagine a bigger life for themselves. So that's kind of a side objective of ours, is to tell the story and try and inspire young people, as I say, of any age. Even if a lot of people are 50. I mean, when I was 50, I never dreamt that I was doing this 15 years later. Never in my wildest imagination. Yeah.
You're probably still sitting in board meetings, conference rooms.
Yeah, all the time. You know, trying to squeeze an extra 0.5% out of our costs. Yeah. So anyways, just going back to our trip, I talked about phase one is fundraising. So there's corporate sponsors, there's private individuals. So anybody that comes up with $1,000 donation, whether an individual or a group, gets their name on the planes. Yeah. Corporate sponsors, depending on the size of the sponsorship, you know, their logos are emblazoned on the planes, and of course, there's many other benefits and websites and promotion and all that stuff. So private individuals or groups, like I have lunch every Friday with 5 or 6 other guys. And we're all retired businessmen and lawyers and that stuff. So the first one I said, you know, you guys, we got to get your name on the plane. You know, I need $1,000 out of you. You know, it's only 150 or 200 each or whatever. Give me. And okay. And I said, well, what am I going to put on the side of the plane? And one of them said, well, obviously it's the Romeo group in it, isn't it? And I said, well, what's the Romeo group? Retired old men eating out. So the Romeo group has been front and center on every mission so far, and they will be next year. But any group or individual gets their name on the plane. So in terms of the fundraising, we've got corporate sponsorships, individual and group donations. We've got donations from the pilots. And then the VFCs, the volunteer flight crew, people are willing to make a large donation to fly along with us for 1, 2, or 3 phases.
What would that cost? Do you have a target?
Yeah,
for
phase one, the first week from Victoria to Toronto, we're looking for a $20,000 donation.
Yeah.
Phase 2 goes from Toronto to Newfoundland and back to, actually, we're going to end at the COPA convention at Saint-Jean, just out of Montreal.
Oh, fun.
And we'll be there for the weekend of the COPA AGM and convention. Yeah. So that's phase 2. Now that's 12 days because that's a lot of ground to cover. And to think about stopping at every capital, Ottawa, Quebec, all the maritime provinces, and going up to Labrador as far as Goose Bay, and then back into Saint-Jean. So that one we're asking $30,000 donation. That's 12 days. And then the final phase from Saint-Jean back to Victoria is a week again, and that's 20,000. So that's a big chunk of revenue we're looking at from that. The corporate donations, the private donations, and the VFCs, and then the pilots. So we got 2 types of pilots. Expedition captains like me and 4 or 5 others so far that are going to fly and have room to take a volunteer flight crew. And so we make a donation for the privilege of doing this. And then that's expedition captains who are carrying volunteer flight crew. And then we have what we call supporting pilots. And that's anybody, and I'm sure including you guys, that want to join us for a leg or two. You might want to fly from Villeneuve to Victoria with us. Or you might want to fly from the Copa Convention to Saint-Jean to Villeneuve, you know? And so we say, come along and fly any part of a phase with us, make $1,000 donation, and we will, Hope Air staff will make you a fundraising page, and I'll send you a sample of that so you see mine.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we say, well, we need $1,000 donation, and you know, if you're going to raise, you know, get people to donate 900 of that or 1,000 of it, great. And also
raise your own money.
Absolutely, and raise a fundraising page and tell everybody you know, and you'll be surprised. One of the guys has already raised $12,000, and he just started 6 weeks ago. Yeah. So that's our sources of revenue. Yeah. Is those 4 buckets: the corporate, the individual and group, the pilots, and the volunteer flight crew.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in flying at least part of it, maybe even all of it, because I really do like the long distance flying, and I need to kind of gather that experience for my own expedition.
Well, not only that, you get experience from somebody that knows how to do it.
Exactly.
So have you crossed the rocks yet, Brian?
I've only gotten partway across them so far, and I do plan to get out to Kelowna a little bit more, because my parents do live out there as well.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Well, let me know when you're coming, eh? We'll hook up.
Absolutely.
But, so the last legs are going to be pretty neat, because we're going to go from Villeneuve to Grand Prairie, and then way up north to just south of Watson Lake to a resort up there. The problem is we're there on July 1st weekend, and we could, you know, they wouldn't risk tying up their whole resort for us in case we didn't get there for weather or whatever. So we've had quite a bit of trouble. Then we're going to spend that July 1st, July 1 to 3 in Kelowna. But the problem is, on a stat holiday, you don't get the press out. So we're actually we're going to go Villeneuve, Grand Prairie, Prince George, overnight in Prince George, then Prince George to Nelson, BC, which happens to be my hometown, and it's probably one of the most beautiful places in Canada to spend a couple of days on a July 1st weekend.
Oh, man.
And so that'll be our final stop before Victoria. We'll go there. We'll fly from Prince George to Nelson on the 1st, and then on the 3rd, Nelson down to Victoria, which will be the completion of our trip.
Wow.
So you'll probably want to come at least that far, Villeneuve to Victoria, because that's a life experience.
Yeah, at the bare minimum, that's definitely what I'm going to do for sure. And I do have the time to do the whole trip, so I might even consider joining the entire thing.
Oh, wow! So we got 3 classes of airplanes, 3 speed classes.
Yeah. Mine will be on the lowest, of course.
Yeah. The 120 knots or slower, so you'll be in there. Yeah. Then we've got 120 to 140. And then 150 plus, so that we'll fly together, which isn't to say formation, but we'll basically start every day with a briefing. You know, somebody will do the weather briefing, and I'm the chief pilot, so I'll make sure that we've got all our ducks in a row. We'll talk about it, and there's 3 groups, and we usually take off and trail, and then you tend to separate quite quickly. Yeah. But unless you really make an effort to stay together. But we always talk on the radio, and each aircraft has got a designated number. So like I'm wings 1, Lee Arsenault is wings 2, Steve Drinkwater is wings 3. So we talk on the radio, or wings 1 to all wing flight. We broadcast it everybody. Yeah. So we talk about what's going on with the weather, whatever. And the
guy in lead can give updates. Hey,
absolutely.
Out up ahead, go south.
Typically, I'm always in the lead with my RV6 because it's pretty quick, and I might be 50 miles ahead. It's to the north. It's looking kind of grungy. I'm diverting to the south a bit, and it just works. It's amazing, and what a great way for people with less experience to learn. It is so much fun, and it's interesting and challenging, and it's fun. And then every night, we're together somewhere at a hotel. And have lots of laughs and talk about the next day. It's more fun than any human deserves to have, really.
Oh, I bet.
This is absolutely perfect for me. This is like
Absolutely.
lights shining from the heavens on this one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it would really prepare you for whenever you're ready to go around the world.
Yep, and I have a couple friends that I think might have some sizable donations that they might be interested in.
Oh, well. Yeah, so put them in touch with me, and my contact's right on the website on the front page. You know, there's a co-pair contact in mine. If they come to me first, I'll make sure we talk to them at the right level, depending on, if it's a big corporation, co-pair jumps in and does their thing with them to make sure that they understand the impact of a sizable donation. The impact it's having on people is staggering. Yeah. We've got a good PowerPoint presentation we can give to any size audience. So please talk to us, and we've got an amazing ground crew already hard at work. Like in Nelson, I mentioned it happens to be my hometown, so I know a few people there, right?
Yeah.
And staying anywhere for a long weekend, especially a nice place, a tourist place like Nelson, is hard. Well, just 3 days ago, I made an inquiry through old friends. I've got friends that I went through high school with and run one of the biggest hotel in town. And of course, their son runs it now. They're retired. And so I said, we're going to have 20 or 40 people coming, and we need accommodation. Well, within 24 hours, I got a note back from their son, the general manager of, now they have 2 hotels. The Hume's booked up, but, we can accommodate quite a few of you. So I've put him in touch with the ground crew, and they're organizing all this. We got another ground crew that's working with the airports, make sure we can be handled, how many airplanes maximum, there's fuel there, all that stuff. But like first trip, me and Russ and Harold, the 3 of us did all this ourselves. Now we got a whole crew doing it. It's amazing.
Wow.
You're making me want to join too.
Well, I think you should, Scott. Yeah.
Maybe bring my gift box.
Yeah, you'll have to take the cassette, Can't take any passengers, but have fun.
Yeah.
Dave, I'd have to give you weather updates.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm shopping right now. I think I'm going to buy an RV-10. So
man.
I'll be flying the 10 rather than the RV-6. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be a good machine.
Yeah.
Especially for that kind of mission.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well,
so any other questions?
I can't think of anything. What about you, Brian?
I think we hit all the most important things there. We hit your world flight, which I thought was incredible. When I was doing a bit of research on you and the organization, I was floored that you'd actually done that, and you'd done it for charity. And I see you're very, very interested in a lot of different charity types of things. So we're very, very happy to have you on here, and quite happy to hear about all this stuff, and hopefully be able to help get the word out and get more pilots involved, or at least get you some donations from people. Yeah.
So from corporate individuals and groups. Like some people, it's a school group or a church group or whatever, and they kind of band together and they come up with $1,000, and they, Kiwanis Club, or all sorts of people that have had their names on the. Some people have given in memoriam. My mother just died, and she had, in memoriam, we've got, just talk to us. We just want to celebrate the fact that this service is available, raise money for it, have a great time while we're doing it, and inspire people.
Right.
I can't think of a better charity that I could be working for than Hope Air.
Or something more fun than that too. Because it kind of strikes all the bases, right? Of what most people want to do with their airplane.
Yeah.
Us pilots, we're always looking for somewhere to go, somewhere to fly. We're just looking for an excuse, and I think this is a pretty good one.
Yeah, no kidding. You guys have heard of Flight Chops, of course, flightchops.com.
Yeah.
So Mike that runs that, he came out for the. This might interest you. Well, I'm sure it will, if you haven't seen it already. He came out for the 2017 COPA convention that was hosted here in Kelowna. Yeah. I'm president of the Kelowna Flying Club, so I was quite involved in that. And Ryan Van Haren, the BCGA guy, he said, we had this problem about all these, what we call flatlanders, wanted to come fly into Kelowna, but across the rocks. So how do we get them? So Ryan had the idea, let's just do a video. Let's just sit around the hangar and talk about mountain flying. So if you go to YouTube or we did what turned out to be a 16-minute video, and I had lots of people tell me I learned more from watching that 16-minute video than I did taking a 4-hour mountain flying course,
Wow.
Because it was myself, Ryan, Mike, and a helicopter guy from Vancouver, who's very funny with a beard. And the four of us just talked for 16 minutes about mountain flying. And it's on copaagm.com or whatever it is, 2017. But you should be able to find it on YouTube too. But probably just Google Copa Kelowna 2017 mountain flying, and you'll find it. And so that was but Mike was out. So while he was here, and this was like 6 months before we took off to go around South America. So I had him fly with us, and he did us a 3 or 4 minute video on Give Hope Wings, Hope Air, and that's available too. And you guys might want to just take a few little screenshots, not screenshots, but a few little clips, a few 10 or 15 or 20-second clips from some of these videos. We've got great video footage that might work well for you on this to integrate into this.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Dave.
My pleasure. I'll really look forward to seeing how this comes out.
We're going to try and make sure you guys are very well taken care of when you come through Villeneuve.
Well, I can tell that when I hooked up with Eldon, and all of a sudden we know all the same people. I guess we're about the same age, although I'll never admit I'm as old as him. But I mean, he just grabbed this and ran with it. He said, "We want to look at it."
Oh yeah.
And obviously, that's how I got to you, right?
Yeah. You got the right guy though. Like Eldon's the perfect guy.
He's a wonderful guy. Yeah.
Eldon's he has this weird knack about him where he's able to just organize. He knows everybody. If you say you're doing something, he'll okay, I got 5 people I need to get you in touch with.
Right.
And off he goes. He's so good and he's so generous.
He's hooked us up with the Elevate group, the women's group. And he said, they're on fire about this. They want to be involved. They want to help, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, part of this podcast, we worked with Elevate to produce a what do you call it? A pilot recurrency training this summer, where we streamed it all on live, so people were able to watch it and then actually download it later and still get their recurrency requirements because of Transport Canada. So we believe it was really, really successful on that one, as successful as the Copa official Copa one. So
yeah. So I'll go on your Facebook page and make a friend request. Or is that appropriate?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Send me a friend request, like our page, etc.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, so we'll talk soon, and we'll look forward to seeing how this comes out. And as I say, I'll hook you up, Ryan, with the appropriate person at Hope Air to give you a few video clips, and I'll try and send you that one I mentioned that we made locally here. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. Awesome.
Great.
Thanks.
Have a great night.
Guys. Yeah, you too.
You too.